Tarajaki. Oh, glorious the assembled devotees. Oh, glorious the assembled devotees. Oh, glorious to Shishi, Guru, and Gauranga. Gaura Premananda. Got a nice cozy fire going, which is try and entice a few more people to come into the temple on a cold morning like this morning. So, what's the slogan? Number 20, 3720. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Durapahi Aupatapasa Seva Vaikuntavatlsu Yatropagigate Nityam Deva Devo Janana Durapahi Aupatapasa. Are we right here?
Just the last word is tapasa, not tapash. There's an A missing second before the H. Tapasa.
Is it? Yeah, T-A-P-A-S-A-H with a dot under the H.
Yes. A-H.
With a dot underneath, so instead of A-H it's aha. Isn't it? Right, tapasaha. Durapahyaupatapasa Seva Vaikuntavatlsu Yatropagyate Nityam Deva Devo Janadana. Durapa, rarely obtainable. He, certainly, Alpatapasa, of one whose austerity is meagre. Seva, service. Vaikuntha, the transcendental kingdom of God. Vatmasu, on the path of. Yatra, wherein. Upagiyate, is glorified. Nityam, always. Deva, of the demigods. Deva, the Lord. Jana Ardana, the controller of the living entities. Translation: persons whose austerity is meagre can hardly obtain the service of the pure devotees who are progressing on the path back to the kingdom of Godhead, the Vaikunthas. Pure devotees engage 100% in glorifying the Supreme Lord, who is the Lord of the demigods and the controller of all living entities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The path of liberation, as recommended by all authorities, is to serve the Mahatma transcendentalists. As far as Bhagavad Gita is concerned, the Mahatmas are the pure devotees who are on the path to Vaikuntha, the kingdom of God, and always chant and hear the glories of the Lord rather than talk of dry, profitless philosophy. This system of association has been recommended since time immemorial. But in this age of quarreling and hypocrisy, it is especially recommended by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even if one has no assets of favourable austerity, if he nevertheless takes shelter of the Mahatmas who are engaged in chanting and the hearing glories of the Lord, he is sure to make progress on the path back home, back to Godhead. Durga me parimendasya skalatpate katirmuhu swakripayustu danana shantu shantu avalambanam Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So I might use this opportunity of the class today just to recap on the chronology of the Bhagavatam here, where we're up to, or as we say, the story so far. I'll just go back a few chapters. We're on chapter 7, text 20, and the chapter is entitled Further Inquiries by Vidura. So we go back a few chapters where we start on Vidura, who went on a pilgrimage for a very, very long time around the greater Bharatvarsha, or the greater India. So 5,000 years ago, India was much larger than what it is now. If we sort of take the borders of India, we see Thailand, which was previously known as Siam. So that's a Vedic name, Siam. What's it mean? Anybody know? Shyam, yeah. So it's named after Krishna. And then, of course, you go to further on to Cambodia, and the Vedic culture was very, very strong in Cambodia. I'm sure some of you have been to Angkor Wat, where there's one of the greatest Vedic temples in the world. And then, of course, going on to Indonesia and Bali, that's got a lot of Vedic culture in it. So all through there. So that was a part of the greater Bharatvarsa. And then, of course, we had going up northwest, we went through Pakistan, Afghanistan. Kandahar was a great city where Gandharva came from. Gandharva, she was married to Dhritarashtra. And then further on, we have Iran, which is another form of saying Aryan. So there was a God-conscious race there in Iran. And then, of course, then there was Russia too. And another name for Russia was Rishi, land of the Rishis. So we can see the extent of the great Vedic culture there, the greater India, Bharat. So Vidura went on a pilgrimage for a very, very long time. And he'd been slighted by his brother, his cousin Duryodhana, and told to get out of the house, leave the kingdom, which he did, and he travelled around for such a period of time. And so now we're coming towards the end of the chapter of Dwapara Yuga. Krishna's just about to wind up his pastimes. And in his travels, he sort of missed out on the whole situation, what happened. Like he missed out on the fratricidal war, the war of Kurukshetra. He missed out on the sinking of Dwarka, and he's sort of knowing something is there, but then he comes across this great sage by the name of Maitreya. So Maitreya was one of the lucky, fortunate people who actually met up with Krishna right towards the end. So I'm just trying to find, well, at that time, after travelling in many parts of the world, this is going back a few chapters, chapter 10, Maitreya, a great devotee of the Lord and a friend and well-wisher of the great sage Dvaipayana Vyas, reached that spot out of his own perfect accord. Oh, there it is. The Lord was sitting, taking rest against a young banyan tree with his right lotus foot on his left thigh. And although he had left all household comforts, he looked quite cheerful in that posture. So this is the Lord's finished up, Lord Krishna has finished up all his pastimes now in the material world. The wars are all over and he's annihilated all the demons and he's resting up against the banyan tree. And it says in the purport, there's a small banyan tree, Pipalia banyan tree, to represent this universe, which is just a small universe compared to all the other universes that are there. And when Maitreya come across the Lord, so he was a great sage and wandering about the land, visiting places of pilgrimage. He also saw that Uddhav was there with the Lord. And the Lord smiled at him. He was leaning back. And so Maitreya had the great fortune to take shelter of Krishna. And Krishna was just about to give the final instructions to Uddhava. So even though Maitreya was a great sage, he was senior in years to Uddhava, still Krishna focused on Uddhava. Why? Because Uddhava was a great bhakta. He had so much mercy that he was so attached to Krishna in his two-handed form, in his original form as the Lord of all Vaikunthas. So this includes the Lord of Vrindavan. So Maitreya, his worship of Krishna was in the form of Vasudeva. So here we have sort of two depictions of Vaikuntha. So Srila Prabhupada is describing that the source of all Vaikuntha is all spiritual worlds put together. So that's one description of Vaikuntha, because Vaikuntha is a place of no anxiety. I was going to look up a sloka, a very beautiful sloka. I don't know if anybody knows it. Shamashrita, maybe you could look it up for us. Shamashrita yat pada palava plavam. So that one is talk about taking shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, who is the liberator of all the spiritual and material worlds. And once you do that, you forego the material world, which is a place of anxiety where there is danger in every step of life. So Vaikuntha means a place of no anxieties, and Kunta means a place where there's full of anxiety, that we're all dreading something. The ultimate fear of death, the process of birth, old age, disease, and death. So this is a description of Vaikuntha. It's the spiritual realm, but it can be seen in different ways. Just like with Maitreya, because he was a great sage, he was also attached to Jnana Yoga, which is the yoga of learning. So many scriptures, so many Vedas, learning so much knowledge. In fact, he was pretty well immersed in it. Even though he's a great devotee of the Lord, he still worshipped the Lord in his Vasudeva form as the Lord of Vaikuntha. You have that sloka? Or you want to read it out?
For those who accepted the vote of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is a shelter of the cosmic manifestation. As famous as Marar, the enemy of Nur named in the ocean, the true world is like water containing the knowledge of Parampara, Vaikuntha, the place where there are no material miseries, not the place where there is danger.
Thank you. So this is a place where there's danger at every step. So the Jnani is trying to liberate himself from this situation here, and Maitreya Muni was a fair way down the line there, but his knowledge had led him to discover that the Supreme Lord was Vasudeva in his four-armed form, and he was the ruler of all the different Vaikuntha planets, and he was the awarder of liberation. So as the devotees know, here we talk about the four different types of liberation on Vaikuntha, that the Vaikuntha planets are so vast that there are different types of varieties there. You can take birth in Vaikuntha. When you go to Vaikuntha, you can associate with the Lord personally in his four-armed form, or you can even get a four-armed form like the Lord on different planets if you want. Be like the Lord. Not only that, you can manifest yourself in all the different other forms that the Lord has, as this was shown to us in the Srimad Bhagavatam reader. You can have that same opulence that the Lord has. The Lord has all the opulence in Vaikuntha, a very rich place, palaces, spaceships, parks, so much wealth and opulence. You can have that. Or you can also have that association with the Lord. So many different places. Vaikuntha had said that there's unlimited spiritual planets. This material universe, it's mind-blowing because it's only tiny little, it's the smallest universe in a whole myriad of universes, which is in this sort of causal ocean, this Mahatattva, which we call the material world, and it's only one small part of the corner of the whole spiritual planets. So we're a minority. We're just human beings, we're a minority. Most of the souls in this in the creation of the Lord are all liberated. So that opportunity is given there. So when Maitreya worshipped the Lord, he saw the Lord as Vasudeva in his four-armed form, the Lord of all the Vaikunthas. So there is two explanations of Vaikunthas here, because it's mentioned here in the translation, and Srila Prabhupada talks about it, that Vaikuntha is the place where all the spiritual planets reside. Of course, we know that the highest planet is that planet where the Supreme Lord is residing in Goloka Vrindavan. There he has a two-armed form. And in his two-armed form is Krishna. He is surrounded by loving devotees who are just imbued with bhakti, that just have love and pure love and attention for Krishna. So Uddhava had attained this platform as a friend, a total friend of Krishna. He served Krishna all throughout his life. In fact, he was so wonderful. He actually looked like Krishna. So when he went to Vrindavan as a messenger for Krishna, the gopis, for a minute moment of time, mistook him to be Krishna. But then when they saw that he wasn't, they still confided in him their feelings for Krishna. And the depth of their feeling for Krishna just completely amazed Uddhava, that the depth of love that one can have for Krishna as the Supreme Person. So Uddhava always saw Krishna in his two-armed form, and he related to Krishna as the Lord of Vrindavan, Lord of Goloka Vrindavan. And so the devotees always do that as well. They relate to Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that Krishna comes and he brings Vrindavan with him, and he tries to take us back to Vrindavan. We're not so much worried about the Vaikuntha planets, although, as I said, I could put it to you, Vaikuntha planets are pretty good. You're liberated, you live forever, you can travel from one planet to another and see the different forms of the Lord, all the beautiful palaces, all the festivals that are going on, and you go to another planet. Just like in the material world here, some people like to go on boat cruises. One of my friends, I saw him 2 weeks ago in Byron Bay. He came and saw me, and I was staying at the yoga centre. He goes, I'm going on 7 boat cruises in a row. Right? I thought, wow, it's really good. So the fact is that you go from here to there, but in the end you run out of places to go. Really, you do, right? Or they all look the same. But it's not like with Vaikuntha, all the liberated souls are going from one place to another eternally. There are so many Vaikuntha planets that you can keep going eternally, But if you ever come back to the same place that you were in the beginning, it's not the same, it's changed, because the spiritual world is ever changing, it's ever increasing. And we're a part of it. When we go back to the spiritual world, we're a part of the process where we enhance our love for Krishna, and he's so happy that he keeps expanding. Even Krishna said that one thing Krishna can't do is keep up with himself. He's expanding so much that sometimes he is amazed by the spiritual acumen of his potencies. So that's the spiritual world. So that's also described as Vaikuntha. One time, Prabhupada, during glorification of his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he also described Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, our grandfather or great-grandfather, as he was a Vaikuntha man. So Maitreya happened upon Krishna, and just by Krishna's association, he became purified. And Krishna was actually speaking to Uddhava. He was giving the last instructions to Uddhava. He gave so much instruction, and deliberately, nothing comes by chance. You don't by chance come upon Krishna. It's actually by the dint of your austerities and whatever you've performed, whatever acts of faith and service you've performed in the past, you get rewarded by seeing Krishna. So Maitreya was there, and he was listening to the conversation, whereas Krishna was addressing Uddhava. But still, Maitreya was totally absorbed, and he understood what the conversation was all about. And the purpose was that he was able to spread what he heard from Krishna to all the other devotees who wanted to hear about Krishna. And one such person was Vidura. So along comes Vidura. So Vidura, first of all, came across Uddhava. So this is just after the conversation with Krishna, and shortly after that, Krishna departed from this material universe. And so Vidura is wanting to know what happened. What's happened to Krishna? What's happened to the Pandavas? What's happened to my cousins? What's happened to my brothers? What's happened to everybody? What's happened to the Kurus? Is anybody still here? So he was wanting to know. And Uddhava was totally overwhelmed by the separation of what had just happened. He'd lost Krishna. Krishna had gone. So he was able to tell that to Vidura, look, Krishna's gone. And Vidura said, did he leave you some instructions, or what was the last words he told you? But Uddhava was pretty choked up. And the fact was, there were three things that was happening. That Uddhava was in total samadhi, thinking about Krishna and his loving pastimes and his relationship with Krishna as a friend. So he was a bhakta who was totally immersed in the bhakti, the loving devotional service of Krishna. That was the first thing. And Maitreya wasn't on that platform. So he was totally immersed. But then also he saw Vidura, who was actually also a great devotee of Krishna, but he was his senior. So he felt it inappropriate that he instruct Vidura on the subject matters what Krishna described to him. And not only that, but being a bhakta, he wasn't as prolific in wisdom as what Maitreya was. Maitreya was a sage, he was a Muni, so he had full knowledge of how this material universe was created, how it was coming about, what was the purpose of everything. And so he knew that Vidura had some really deep questions to ask him. So he said, search out Maitreya and ask Maitreya about all this. So that's what Vidura did. So he found Maitreya a short time later, and so they sat down, and this is where we have inquiries by Vidura of Maitreya. And of course, Maitreya described to him, so Vidura asked a whole lot of questions in the beginning about how does this cosmic creation come about? What are the Lord's omnipotencies? So he asked those questions of, what is what's spiritual, what's material, what is this universe comprising of? And that's what we've been discussing in the last 3 chapters at Maitreya at length. If we remember, describe how the universe comes from body of Mahavishnu, how it fills up full of half water, half water, fills up half full of water, and Lord Vishnu incarnates in his secondary expansion, and then incarnates in his tertiary expansion within all the living entities. So he was describing that and the 3 modes of material nature, and then he went to describe the living entity. He's the one that enters into it. This is universe that actually is there for us guys to come into, us living entities. We've sort of somehow or other become separated from the material world. We left the party. We're lost in the bush, right? Happens sometimes, doesn't it? It just gets stray. Oh, what's this over here, So we saw the material universe, cosmic tattva, what's happening there? Oh, well, you can enjoy separate from Krishna over there, but you've got to be careful. Once you go, you just get caught. No, I won't get caught. No, the modes of material nature will get you. Goodness, passion. No, I'll just stay on the edge. I'll just stay on that platform of goodness just for one lifetime. I'll go back to the spiritual. I just want to see what it's like, right? But then the whole fact is that there's material mode of goodness. There's no pure goodness. Really, there isn't. Even Lord Brahma had the slightest tinge of passion every now and then. So as soon as you set foot in the material world, it's like a trap. You get trapped. And then there's a material mode of passion, and then you sort of explore that mode, and then with passion then comes ignorance, and all of a sudden you're caught up in the 8,400,000 species of life. You're bouncing around, as they say, kind of Bhagavan Jiva. How's that start? Brahmanda Brahmate, kind of Bhagavan Jiva, Guru Krishna. Say? Prasadipaya Bhakti Lata Beach. So up and down we go in this material universe. So we're caught. So this is the explanation, a detailed explanation that Maitreya was giving for Vidura, which was for the benefit of everybody, because it can pass down the line. Vidura's conversation with Maitreya was recorded by Somaka Rishi, was recorded by Sutta Goswami, who got off Sukadev Goswami, and so it was passed down, and here we have it. We have this conversation here 5,000 years ago, and this comprises the Srimad Bhagavatam. So at the end of this first part, where Maitreya is explaining the nature of this material universe to Vidura, he stops and he comes up with the conclusion of what the purpose of all this is about, just about 6 slokas ago. So we just finished here, and he says, we're up to sloka 20, so he said in 14, just a few days ago, simply by chanting and hearing of the transcendental name, form, etc., of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one can achieve the cessation, unlimited miserable conditions. Therefore, what to speak of those who retain the attraction for serving the flavoured dust of the Lord's lotus feet? So he just went on to say that actually the people here, because they're rotating in this cycle of birth and death, ultimately come to the conclusion that, hey, this place is just temporary, that you can't actually enjoy here, because whenever there's a cessation, enjoyment is just temporary. And we just have identified with the material matter so much that we're identifying with our bodies, which is a misidentification, because we're actually not these bodies, with spirit soul. So Vidura is getting the source from Maitreya, that you just simply hear and chant about the transcendental name, pastimes of the Lord, and then you become absorbed and you become spiritualized, and gradually you lose that taste for material nature. So 6 slokas later, Vidura is thanking you, so grateful for all that instruction he was given, And he had more questions to ask him. So we got this chapter, which is called Further Inquiries by Vidura. So then he goes to talk about what happens to the living entity when he comes here. Where does he go? Who does he become? And so then Maitreya, he begins to instruct Vidura about all the different personalities that were here, all the different genealogies, all the devotees of the Lord. And so we're just about to launch in another session where Vidura is explaining all the different incarnations. Vidura is getting an explanation from Maitreya. So Maitreya is one of the key proponents in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in summing up his gratitude, so we talk about text 20 here, persons whose austerity is meagre can hardly obtain the service of the pure devotees who are progressing on the path back to the kingdom of God in Vaikuntha. Pure devotees engage 100% in glorifying Supreme Lord, who is the Lord of the demigods and control of living entities. So in the purport here, Srila Prabhupada explaining is that path liberation recommended by all authorities is to serve the Mahatma Transcendentalist. And he made a mention in that the Bhagavad Gita talks about that. So he's talking about the 9th chapter, sloka number 13, which is Mahatmanastamam parata devim prakritim ashrita bhajanti ananya manaso yatva buddharim avyayam. So the great souls who are not deluded by the 3 modes of material nature, they don't put their foot in the mode of goodness and tamper with it and sort of get contaminated, but they surpass all the 3 modes. They are under the protection of the divine nature. So they become totally engaged in devotional service and know to be the Supreme Lord as the original and inexhaustible creator of all the material spiritual universes. So this is the separation between the divine and the material. So therefore, the purpose of a living entity here is to elevate ourselves to that platform of divine energy, where that spiritual energy is that eternal spiritual energy, and that is the natural energy which we have. So we experience that through our different processes of bhakti yoga. We are bhaktis. So Srila Prabhupada is here to give us this bhakti yoga. It's the highest yoga. It surpasses all the jnana, all the other different types of forms of yoga. Yoga means link up with God, so I know we do all forms of hatha and now yas and yin yoga, and then there's a bit of jnana yoga, do all that. But the purpose of that is to lead us to that platform where we understand what is spiritual and what is temporary and what the nature of our relationship with that essence that Creator is all about. So the creator of this human body, how fantastic is that we have all these facilities. So the pious soul is very thankful to the creator for having given us these material bodies. And by this process of gratitude, then we get pleasure in the association of the Supreme Lord, and the Lord keeps awarding us this mercy. So where does this mercy come from? Because in the sloka, it is saying, persons whose austerity is meagre can hardly obtain the service of pure devotees. So I was just thinking back on our situation. So in the beginning, so how did we stumble across this? We've got, on one hand, we have Maitreya Rishi, who is well versed in all of Vedic literatures, and he's performed so many austerities by travelling from one place to another. So what are our austerities? So I suppose Srila Prabhupada used to say the austerity for us people is just no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, and no intoxication. So that, in the beginning, that seems easy. So yeah, okay, we can try that. That's great. And it's easy to do. But sometimes it's like austerity means austerity, just like sometimes you see in the festivals of Kumbh Mela, the yogis, they will hold up one hand or they will stand on one leg. So that's all right for a little while to hold one hand up or stand on one leg for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and then you sort of the whole body starts to change, and you're holding your hand up and you realise what austerity really means. What to speak of Hiranyakasipu, the greatest demon this universe ever knew, who was vanquished by Lord Nrsimhadev there, stood on the tips of his toes with his both hands outstretched like that, with his head up to the sky for 10,000 celestial years, right? It stood like that, and the ants ate his body, all the bugs, ants, everything, and he's just reduced to bones, but he kept the life air within his bones, and it was so powerful. See, that's the thing about austerity, is you develop power. So flames shot out of his head, and they shot out so hard and fast that they scorched the whole universe. So Lord Brahma was obliged to say, okay, that's enough there. I'll give you what you want. Oh, thank you very much. I want immortality. Right, so that's another story. But this is the process of austerity. So what do we get through our austerities of, following the four regular principles? We get to actually come closer to Krishna by our austerities, because actually we understand Krishna is pleased by the love and the devotion which we do. So if we perform our austerities with love and devotion, then we increase our love for Krishna. And how does it start? We don't have much in the beginning. So I was just reflecting on that. How did we all come about? How did it start? So in our day, Krishna Rupa and whoever else is here, I think the portals of austerities were a little bit more open than what they are now. I was thinking of it. I just heard this and I've been meditating on it. I spoke about it with Lucas over here, that I was just listening to this devotee story how he joined the Hare Krishna movement. His name was Hari Kirtan in New York. That he was just, like all of us, it's the same story. We have a common denominator. We're looking for something else. We're dissatisfied. And we're going around studying all this Alan Watts be here now, looking at anything that's from India, that, what's the meaning of transcendental, is psychedelic transcendental. We're trying to work through it all. And somewhere along the line, we hit a chanting party. The Hare Krishnas come past around the corner. Well, these guys, this is crazy, what these guys doing. So this is the story of Hare Kirtan in the streets of New York, and he's seeing the devotees, they're very melodic, and then they had these food carts. So he was vegetarian in the early days. Used to be macrobiotic diet, right? Brown rice and mung beans, right? Pretty austere. Still remember Shakahari's there for. So he went to the pushkar, and the food was delicious. It was just delicious food. So he's hanging out with the carts. He's seeing the devotees. He's appreciating the music a lot. And then someone said, hey, they've got this 6-story building around the corner there, a couple of blocks away, and they've got spare rooms, because he was staying in the basement of some gallery somewhere, very, very austere, just a basement. He said, well, a room is better than a basement. So he goes to the Hare Krishna temple, and he said, oh, can I stay at your temple? He goes up to the 6th floor there, the temple president said, sure, why not? Yeah, move in. And he said, oh, I'd like to pay some rent. So he goes, oh, you have to see the temple commander about that. He'll work out the terms and conditions. So he goes back down to the 1st floor. He meets the temple commander, I forget his name. And that temple commander just, every time he went in for a meal in the temple there, on their way out, the temple commander would be playing the Madanga, said, just chant Hare Krishna, your life will be sublime. And it was the same guy. And he said, well, I want to live here. What's the rent? He said, well, we don't charge any rent here, but you have to follow the 4 rules and regs. No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. He goes, oh, that's easy. I can do that. And he's leaving the room and he's thinking, wow, I did really well then. I really sort of, did a good deal because I was going to pay them, but they didn't want any money, right? They just follow those. But what he didn't realise was he walked straight into the Bhakti program, and he was part of the Bhakti program from then on. So after a while, he had his job as a mimeograph. They used to have mimeographs. You ever heard of that? They used to, so they didn't have, like printers or anything. You sort of print something off, and then if somebody wants something, you take it to the other side of town. So he was doing that, and after a while, he's really, well, I'm getting free food, I've got free rent here, why do I need to work? So I just stay at the temple, and he started chanting and became a devotee. He got tricked into it. That was one thing. I mean, in my personal situation, when I was ready to join, I just knocked on the door of Melbourne Temple, and it was Tarban that answered the door, strangely enough, and he opens the door, and I said, I'd like to join. And he goes, once you come through these doors, you never ever leave. I go, okay, right, that was my entry, that's all I had to do. And I was just thinking of Jivanath, my good friend Jivanath, he's in Mayapur at the moment. He's always leading a kirtan. He was telling me his story that he was a happy-go-lucky guy in Philadelphia, and someone gave him a card to a love feast. That's what we used to call a Sunday feast in those days, a love feast. He goes, oh, that's pretty good, a spiritual love feast. I'll check it out, see what it's like. So he goes into the temple, he goes right into the middle of a kirtan, and kirtans used to be pretty frenetic. We're all brahmacharis, all saffron, all jumping up and down and go, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. And if you know Jivanath, he's naturally attracted to music. You can never get the microphone away from him. He's always leading a kirtan. So that sort of natural attraction was there. And he starts jumping up and down with them too. And he said he was jumping higher than all of them, just enjoy, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. And then after that, they all sat down for the feast, and they're noticing that he's sort of really eager. So they kept feeding him gulab jams, right? So that was like the thing that we used to do at Sunday feast, that every Sunday feast, there would be someone on Saturday making like 300 or 400 gulab jams, making sure that was not only enough for the feast, but there was enough for the 3 or 4 or 5 days next to it. There was like a secret stash that you could go to if you sort of like come back from Sankirtan or something. Where's the gulabs, So they kept feeding him gulabs, and he was so full that he was so happy and blissful that he didn't really feel like leaving, right? And they said, that's all right, just stay the night, right? So he stayed the night, and then 1 week later, he's still, I really got to go. So he took off, and then he realised that he couldn't sort of stay away from the devotees. He came back again, became a devotee. So it seems like the portals were really easy. So, it's a bit different now, but still the same. The nectar is still here in Krishna consciousness, that you feel that spiritual vibration within, and it's the Chaitanya Guru within the heart that Krishna actually, that he reciprocates with you. He makes that connection. So what are the austerities? So the austerities we are performing, there's Mangaladi in the morning. It's everybody seems to turn up. It doesn't seem to be that much of austerity. It's always an austerity to get up at any time of day anyway, isn't it? Whether it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, it's still the same thing, isn't it? I was just listening to something. I've got a few minutes. I just want one waffle on. So I was listening to another devotee who also joined in New York, but then he found that the temple life was a bit too much because they had to go out on street Sankirtan every day, and everybody used to get 35 cents in the morning to go out, and that was what the fare cost to get into town. But he'd get 70 cents just in case he didn't sell any books, right? He went up to New Vrindavan, and he saw there was like about 30, 40 brahmacharis all living together, and they'd all get up and they'd be chanting the rounds at 2:30 in the morning, right? And if you made it at 2:35, they look, hey, you're letting the whole team down. What's the matter with you? 2:30 in the morning, you've got all the rounds done by, Mangaladi. So sometimes we sort of take austerities to another level there, in our brahmacharya. It's okay. It's good. Prabhupada appreciates that. So that's the austerity. So what is it? It's the austerity of the mind, that we have to learn how to control our mind. And that is the process that we do the chanting. We do the 16 rounds of, we work up to 16 rounds chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And that is, the mantra means mind control. And this is why Prabhupada says it's paramount that we focus on the chanting of our japa. And we do it nicely. We just talk to Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's all we have to say. Just concentrate Krishna, just like we say someone's name. Hey, whoever. Hey, Gopal. Hey, Gopal. We're focusing on the person. Hey, Gopal. So that's, hey, Krishna, Hare Krishna. And that's all. And then the process just takes over naturally. So that is the process. And that is it. I'll read sloka once more. Persons whose austerity is meagre can hardly obtain the service of the pure devotees who are progressing on the path back to kingdom Godhead of Vaikuntha. Pure devotees engage 100% glorifying Supreme Lord, who is Lord of the demigods and control of all living entities. So I just have to re-emphasize that to do this process, you have to take shelter of the Mahatma Transcendentalists, just like Maitreya. It was very Vidura. Maitreya was very Vidura. Vidura was very thankful that Maitreya filled him so full of knowledge, and he praised him as, "You're my spiritual master, you're my preceptor, and I'm following in your footsteps." And the general rule is that the spiritual master is the one that imparts the knowledge unto you in disciplic succession. This way, the knowledge is intact. So, due to our disciplic succession, due to Srila Prabhupada's diligence in printing these books, we have the Srimad Bhagavatam, and so we have this timeless wisdom. It's said here, it's timeless wisdom, which what it is. Yeah, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments want to make? Stories how they joined? Go on, Chris. We have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for the lovely class, Prabhu. In the last sentence of the purport, Prabhupada talks about even if one has no assets of favourable austerity, if he nevertheless takes shelter of the Mahatmas, etc., is sure to make progress in the path back home, back to Godhead. Could you define a little bit what's favourable austerity and then what would be unfavourable austerity?
Okay, so there is austerities, like I said, that sometimes you may want to sort of go on a 3-day fast, something like that, just to cleanse your body. Well, that is an indirect austerity, or you might want to, say, go on a tapasya where you don't speak for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. That's a sort of form of austerity. So we have all these different forms of austerities that we can form, or we go on this diet and that diet. But we study the purpose of that austerity. What is it for? Is it just actually to make me more astute, to make me smarter? Is it to do with my bodily sort of my mind, ego, and intelligence to help me in my situation? Or are we performing austerities to get closer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Just like we want to fast, we can fast on Ekadasis, and Ekadasi is very, very spiritual day, and it's tied in with chanting extra rounds. That's what fasting is all about, so you can have more time for spirituality. So whatever austerity we perform, is it going to take us further in our connection and connect us with Krishna even more? So that is the difference in this, because sometimes people like to do something where they develop power and the strengths of the mind. You have gurus and motivators that tell you to do this all the time. So that's very nice, but if it's for a material benefit, then it just sort of stitches you up even further. But if it's a austerity form for the pleasure of Krishna, then you're actually circumventing so many lifetimes to actually get to Krishna within this one very lifetime. My understanding, is that right? Thank you. Padma's got a question here. Yeah, Padma. Oh, had your hand up. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Intoxication. In the world we live in today, we use our mobile phones all the time. Could that be considered a form of intoxication?
I think it's a form of attachment, definitely. So intoxication usually means inebriation, that we become inebriated and our senses somehow or other change. You know, we sort of we enjoy the toxic effect of the intoxication. But the other one is like mobile phones or the website, and that's another way of becoming, just another way of becoming attached to the dream. So it's said that in this material world, we're sort of dreaming. So we have the dream factor where we sometimes see, we become illusion. It's like we mistake water in the desert for a mirage where there's no water because we know what water's like. Sometimes we go to see a film or we go to the internet, wherever, and their mind just gets captured by an illusory fact. Just like a lot of people's minds are more attached to the sitcom that they're attached to rather than their own personal life or what's happening around them, what's happening to their relatives. They know more about the persons in the movie than they do about the relatives. So that's like a dream. And then the product of all these dreaming is that the material energy puts all these dreams together and it gives us this material body, what we desire and what we dream about, and here's who we are. You know, this is your life now. Truman, this is, you're so-and-so, you're so-and-so, and you're living out your dream. But the fact about the dream is that it's very, very temporary, like we were saying. It's just only a situation where it's for a short period of time, and then you get another body to facilitate what you dreamt of in this lifetime, and so on and so forth. So therefore, and the trappings are there. They're always there. We didn't have the internet when we joined. We didn't have cyberspace. We didn't have social media. So this is just another form of binding people to this material world, to the illusion of the material world. So therefore it's a double-edged sword, but I'm not saying it can't be used for good purposes, which it can. We've got so many, during COVID, we started so many chat sites, Bhagavad Gita groups and so on and so forth. So you can use everything in Krishna's service. It's called Yukta Vairagya. But on the other hand, as I said, it's a double-edged sword that it can take you down the material path very quickly. What's that saying? Take you down the rabbit hole, also so quickly. I think we have to go now. I just heard the bell. So, Jai, thanks for coming. Thanks for enjoying the atmosphere. Hare Krishna.